I wanted to push up to my channel here my first impression of Catapult Feud. Now, is it a board game? Is it a tactical game? I've already, having the chance to play it a few times, I'm already looking and approaching it this from the perspective of there's tactica here. Not just physical coordination of trying to smash down your opponent's castle with a bunch of little foam balls fired on a catapult, but the physics of building the castle with the materials that you have and protecting your soldiers. I think there's something there. We're going to have to really start to explore some of these ideas and take an almost competitive approach to it. So how did I stumble onto this board game, onto this game? Well, we've been playing some Fireball Island. We've been playing some other, would you call them physical dexterity games? This idea at the gaming club, at the store, after we finish up and we want to kind of wind down, to pull out these real beer and pretzel type games where they're very swingy. A lot of weird things can happen. Things go down the mountain with Fireball Island. Maybe it hits you, maybe it doesn't. Is your figure knocked over? Is it not knocked over? Where we can just like kind of play some games and not worry about the exact rules or nitpick type things and just have some fun and be surprised. So it seemed a natural conclusion to eventually jump to Catapult Feud. Now, back in the day, so I went into this expecting kind of crossbows and catapults. Back in the day, I had crossbows and catapults. Over time, they broke, and then eventually they got cannibalized for various wargaming systems, and we did some Battlemaster supplements, but then that got cannibalized and taken apart for Warhammer Fantasy armies and some other terrain. I have one of the crossbow and catapults keeps with the door and the catapult on the back that has been completely redone and repurposed. It's under there. It's terrain for D&D, and it's always interesting when one or two people kind of recognize what that piece was. But I remember playing crossbows and catapults, and we had the dragon, we had the battering ram, we had the keeps, we had the various sets. They were really flimsy. They were really all over the place. To try and have some accuracy with the catapults, you really didn't have that. And firing the crossbows or the ballista, that was really your best shot. But even that, it was very kind of hit or miss, and it was hard to hit the castles. And after a certain point, you just said, well, I'm going to shoot it at the player, and we'd kind of see if we could hit each other with it, and things just kind of completely devolved. It wasn't a bad game, but the production quality for a beer and pretzels game, it really wasn't there. And they would break and things would happen, and we lost the battering ram and we made a new one. So going into that, I didn't have any expectations. If I got a couple of plays out of it and we had some fun and we blow some stuff up, it's a win. The production quality was fantastic. And I'm not just talking about the box, hard quality box with the artwork and inserts and kind of a very comic book type approach and vibrant colors, but the pieces themselves, the bricks were all solid. They weren't kind of this half molded. The figures, I'm looking at the figures for mass-produced figures. I'm like, these would paint up kind of nice. So now I'm already thinking, maybe I want to paint this set up, and maybe I want to weather the castle bricks and see what can happen there. The catapults themselves, extremely solid. And we've gotten into the ballista, the crossbows, and the battering rams. Everything is solid about the game. So I was really, really impressed from that production quality perspective. It's well above and beyond and evolved from crossbows and catapults, and I can definitely see it standing up to the test of time. But we'll see how it plays out. So we went into the first couple of games, no pre-knowledge. This idea of, look, we're not going to test out any of these catapults. We're not going to test out any of the crossbows. Like, we're just going to play. You got to adapt the first couple of games. I was really surprised at how powerful and how accurate the catapults were. They really worked. They really tossed the boulder, it's like this hard foam, across and did some significant damage to the castle. It felt like you were actually shooting something. Now, with a little bit of experimentation, we found out that wrapping the rubber bands as intended, that was the other thing with crossbows and catapults. admittedly and probably, we loaded those things up. We loaded those things up like 3, 4, 5 times, and we had a house rule like you couldn't leave your post. So you stayed behind the castle and you sat there, and just those things would fly at you. And if you missed, you had to kind of get out of the way with that. So how accurate these catapults were, it surprised me. And that got me thinking. I thought I built a pretty good castle first round. It just got demolished, completely exploded. So I'm like, hey, there could be some tactica. There's some tactica. There's some something going on here with it. And what we discovered was, based on the catapults and how you wrap the rubber bands as instructed, with about a 5-foot distance, it specifically is about 5 feet across from each other, the two castles, that makes accuracy really powerful and really controlled. Now, occasionally you'd miss and one of the boulders would go rolling across the club floor and you got to go grab it. But I didn't feel like we even really needed a backstop with it. It was very, very interesting. And I was actually really impressed to jump into a game, beer and pretzels, have some fun, build some stuff, blow it up, knock it down. Tremendous production quality, a lot of fun, easy to aim, almost to the point where you could really get behind there and hit a specific point in the castle. And then, of course, looking at the miniatures and saying, maybe I want to paint these up. And I'm looking at the mats and saying, like, well, maybe we will upgrade these. Very, very interesting from that perspective. So the next piece, we're going to just play some games, get some stuff in, and I'm already immediately looking and saying to myself, how can I better build some of these castles? How could we incorporate some of the expansions tactically? Some have more guaranteed value than the others. I like the idea of the battering ram, but it has to kind of make its way across the table. And then at some point you can snipe the soldier driving it and possibly lose that soldier. So I'm looking and saying, what's that optimal place where if I'm on my side of the table, you're going to try and knock down the castle, because blowing up my fortification, possibly knocking over my figures on the playmat, versus trying to snipe one on the battering ram. But likewise, if I fire the battering ram, I'm too far away. It doesn't do anything. So how close, if I've got this 5-foot table, I mean, these are the calculations. You're like, Fritz, this is a total beer and pretzel game. You're way overthinking this. But I'm like, you don't understand. First, everything's approached as a war game. Second, I love you guys, but some of the guys I play with, you can't lose a game. Doesn't matter the game, you can't lose it, because then you hear about it all week. You get random texts, you get random emails, you get memes. Like, you can't do that. So I approach this from the perspective of like, yes, absolutely, I need to be on top of this. So I'm already looking and saying, if I've got this siege engine, this battering ram rolling out, how far forward do I need to be where it's reasonably hard-ish to still hit and snipe the soldier operating it, but at the same time, when I attack, I've got some punch. It's not going to blast down the wall because I'm not point blank. None of us ever made it point blank yet. But if I can find that sweet spot of attack and defense and turn it into a viable engine, that could have some interesting possibilities. So I find myself really looking at this where it's not just a toy. We're going to turn this into a practical war game. But what a surprise to kind of relive that. And if you've played crossbows and catapults, it definitely blows that out of the water. The next set after that, I'm spacing on it. Was it Weapons and Warriors? It had a lot of different siege engines and a lot of different things. I skipped on Weapons and Warriors because I was like, well, now, I'm a Wargamer and we've kind of moved on to serious games and things like that. But hey, Battle Masters was fun and other type of games. So skipping that set, playing that, I don't know how this current incarnation stacks to that, but I really can't see a higher production value or things going beyond what Catapult Feud has, given the prices of the core box and the expansions. They're not that unreasonable. So we're going to push out a few of those as we evolve a little bit more. And I'm going to play around with some of the castle designs and really see what I can do.